Welcome to Ice Age Journeys. What the project is about is to try and communicate with the people of Newark and Farndon about how important this site is. It's of national importance and probably of international importance. The people of Newark and Farndon will all know about the castle and the sconce, the Civil War sconce, but actually this site, which is so much earlier, is where Newark's history really starts. Ice Age Journeys is a project where volunteers from the community and professionals are working together, and this is made possible by the Heritage Lottery Fund. Fari Archaeology, the local community group, received a grant a year and a half ago now to enable this project. The people who visited here, and we know that from the flint tools that they left behind, probably travelled in small family groups, and we can trace them through the flint tools, both here and in other places along the Trent Valley, but also at places like Creswell Crags. At Creswell Crags, we know that they utilised the caves, perhaps didn't live in them so much, as actually maybe just stayed overnight or maybe for a few days. But whilst they were there, they actually engraved on the walls some of the animals that they were probably hunting. The people here chose the high ground between the two rivers of the Trent and the Devon, and this is shown beautifully in this plan here, prepared by Simon Price at the BGS, which shows the area we are as a high spot, as an island, if you like, between the two rivers. So our model is that they were ambushing the animals by the river, maybe in the boggy ground by the river, and then perhaps dragging the carcasses back of the animals that they caught to butcher them and process the skins here. And it's the tools from those activities that we're finding surviving in the ground.
We got together with the county archaeologists and which suggested that we promote the site and try and look at the site in much more detail than what it had been done already. And with it being on our doorstep, it was an ideal opportunity for us to promote it and to be able to investigate it. So it gives us, the members of the Fari group, an opportunity to become involved with the site and to be able to welcome people onto the site and explain everything that we're doing, from how to work the electronic equipment for measuring and so on, but also to come on the site and to be able to do the field walking, then do the augering, and then to see the process by which, and to look at the process by which we are starting to pinpoint where we're doing the sieving and where we're going to do the digging, where we're going to look at and trying to find this undisturbed flint. It's fantastic to be all part of the total process. And to work with experts and people like professors from Oxford University is a wonderful opportunity.
So this is exactly as one would see the remnants of a what we call a napping, a flaking scatter, and this is what we're hoping to find in the field from the Ice Age, in the Ice Age levels, because we know that when people nap flint, they leave almost triangular scatters of debris when they're sitting on the floor and they're napping flint. And these pieces are the pieces that might have been useful to them, and so we wouldn't find them because they were taken away from the site, as were something like the hammerstone and perhaps some antler hammers as well, because these are quite valuable to people for everyday purposes. And this is what we would have been left behind in the field, which is just a small scatter of material, the waste products, and possibly the core that was left behind as well. And the other pieces would have been removed and used as tools. So as you can see, it is quite a wasteful technique, but it does leave a very distinctive pattern, and we're hoping that we might find a pattern rather like this as evidence that people were working flint in the past in this field. This is a small selection of the artifacts that have been found in this field, and from a very small area scatter, and shows the remains of a campsite. We find tools like this. This is a scraper. This is a sort of tool that you would find that would be used for removing the backs of hide, animal hide, to prepare it either for clothing, perhaps for some form of shelter, some form of tent. And it's quite exciting because we might, in some instance, actually be able to look at the edges of these objects underneath the microscope and pick up small polishes and wear traces which would show us how this object was actually used. We also find things like this, which is a much rarer tool. I don't know if you can make this out, but it's a point. It's a sharp flint point that has been deliberately shaped into, if you like, a type of spear point or arrowhead. And these have been found at other sites in Europe in association with animal kills. So we're pretty sure that the people who were here were hunting animals. We don't have any of the bones, but we have their equipment. These would be animals like horse and possibly red deer, giant deer, maybe even reindeer, although we're not sure that reindeer were around at the time. So bit by bit we have an idea of what's happening at this site in terms of the debris that was left behind, which these are the objects that we have here.
So when we're test pitting, we can't just dig a hole and have done with it. We have to do a whole lot of recording. That's just one of the recording sheets. We've got a whole series of them because it's very important that we document what we're doing fully. If you just dig a hole and get finds out, it's basically treasure hunting, and it doesn't really tell you anything. And what we need to know is sort of where the finds are coming from, and we need to know all details about the type of soil they're from and that kind of thing, so that we can interpret them properly. Because there's been a lot of ploughing which churns things up, and then worms and all that move things around. So it's really important that we study the soils in as much detail as possible so that we can sort of understand the context.
Just over here behind us, when the field was ploughed, they found a large concentration of flint. And so the idea now with these test pits is to try and establish the spread of that concentration of material. Now also, so we dig these 1 metre squares, and what the fact the flints were found over there is that they were churned up by the plough. What we're hoping is to go through the plough soil and find flints in an undisturbed deposit. We do it very carefully in sort of 10, first of all, go through the plough soil 10 centimetre splits, then into smaller groups like this, and then we break the square into quadrants, and everything is sieved in the machine behind you.
The archaeologists wanted sieves that were functional, they did the job. They was transportable so that we could get them in and out cars onto sites easy, and also they did the job. Normal way would be to use 2 sieves, just sieve one lot and then sieve another lot, but I decided to try and do both at one time to save on time and energy. This is a finer mesh sieve to catch the finest things. These are the largest sieve to catch the largest things. And what we needed was a side-to-side motion, and we have achieved that by putting those 4 hooks up there, so it rocks very simply. To get it in cars, it comes to pieces by the bolts at the sides here, bolts up, rebolts together, so it's a very small size indeed.
Just a little experiment to see whether this wet sieving will reveal anything that's been missed in the dry sieving. Obviously this is a much finer process, and it has the advantage of washing the material as you sieve it, which means you can examine it more easily.
Field walking is just looking at the surface of the field, and what we're looking for is artefacts that have been brought up to the surface and have been washed clean by the rain. while we've been working on the excavation here, there are obviously some finds here that we missed. So we've marked one with this little white tag here, and underneath it, I'll take it out, you can see the artefact just on the surface. When we're field walking, we would mark the finds with tags just like this, and then we would survey them with our EDM so that we get a plot of their actual position. When we plot all of the finds, we then can look at the pattern of distribution.
Well, it's an electronic measuring device. And what we're doing is we're setting it up exactly over a pin in the ground, a very, very precise pin to within a millimetre. And we have to get it directly over this pin so that it's completely level. And we're talking a very, very precise measurement. That if the finds are similar to the ones here, then we can fairly confidently predict that we are looking at the same area, the same type, the same archaeology, and something that's related to this site.
Our job here is to try and find archaeology in its physical setting, in its geology. It's easy to find the archaeology here on the High Point because the modern ploughing has brought the stone tools to the surface, but they're disturbed. So the interesting thing that we're going to try and do in the future is follow this geology sideways back down the side where it is buried under small sand dunes. We know this, we've augured one of these things. There we hope to get the old landscape upon which humans were living buried outside the reach of the plough, way deeper, so that we can see much more clearly the traces of their behaviour without the disturbance that the ploughing produces.
I'm going to draw in detail everything that I can see on this space here, which is called the section. The line enables me to be able to measure so that I can pinpoint accurately on the scale drawing where the various features are. And in particular, the geologists want to see where these different levels appear.
Yeah, this particular piece of flint we found, this blade, say all the characteristics of it are being 14,000 years old. This is quite datable by the characteristics of the flint and the way it's made. So I think the point is that if it had been found in this plough soil, it had been residing in it would have been chewed up by the plough and broken. So the fact it's preserved has been fortunate that it's in this transition layer. And obviously if you get even further into this sand layer that we're coming into, things are going to be more preserved. So it's the importance of it that obviously modern agriculture, particularly in the ploughing area, is going to damage these things forever. So we've got a unique situation that we've got them here preserved, fortunately just below plough level.
This is an auger. We press it into the soil to see how far we'd still need to go before we reach the natural sort of surface at the bottom. So what we're going to do is to just test that now and see how far more we've got to dig.
We've dug a test pit here and we've recorded it by both drawing and photography, and now we have to backfill it so that we reinstate the land so that the farmer can continue to use it for his agricultural crops.
I've learnt how community spirited they are. They've informed me that the local residents have been to have a look at what they're doing, which I think is very important, that we bring the local community into a project like this. And I think that's truly wonderful. And I do think it has brought the whole community together. For the future, I would hope that they get more funding, because I think none of us are aware of what lies under us.
I hope that in another 5 years we are in the midst of doing even more extensive work on this site. One of the difficult things about this site is, what is the site? How many fields actually is it? Underneath the A46 we had the two in situ clusters of of Paleolithic material that were found as they'd been left by those people 14,000 years ago. We don't know how many more of those clusters await discovery, i.e. clusters that are still in situ. What the FARI group are looking at the moment is a collection which is mainly in the plough soil, and we know that there's at least one more of those. But we don't know how many more haven't yet been touched by the plough, how many more are waiting in the little lower scoop where people were lurking and waiting to hit passing animals over the head. We've got no idea how many more of them there are. We don't know how many fields it covers. What we do know is that so far from these fields that we're sitting in today, we have the largest collection of Paleolithic material from the plough soil. So the future of it has to be it being protected and better understood. And to my mind, the best way of doing that is with the kind of setup that the FARI group have got now, where we've got local people, and they're not just local to the Farndon village, they come from all over the county, and they're being supported by professional archaeologists like Daryl Garton. And of course they've had all this brilliant help from Professor Nick Barton of Oxford and Simon Colcutt, who have put a lot of time in, basically for free, and who are really good at sharing with people their enthusiasm for the subject. It is one of the most difficult types of archaeology because there's so little left. You have to have a basic understanding about how the tool that you're looking at was created and what kind of materials the person who was making it had to work with, and just how limited that range of materials was. So it's a huge leap of imagination to be able to get back there, to be able to get back to 14,000 years ago on a completely different landscape. And many of the things that most of the things we take for granted, just not available to the people who are here. So I hope that for the future we will be able to see what's going on over there happening on a bigger scale, finding out more and more about it, and really having that really good mix between professional and community archaeology that I think has made this project such a delight to be associated with.
This site is absolutely enormous. It is the extent of 20 football pitches, which is more extensive than anywhere else in Britain. And we've only looked at a little pinprick of the site, but by volunteers working with professionals, we're hoping that we can go on into the future and really put this site on the map. The really great thing about this is that it has been a genuine partnership between community archaeologists, volunteers and professionals, and this is just the first journey of many more Ice Age journeys to come, we hope.